Kazakh national handcrafts make up the precious roots of steppe culture. They provide an inside look into nomadic lives. The art of the nation who once lived upon the Great Steppe is pictured here through wood and iron processing, jewelry and felting. Many programs modernize the culture of hunting, falconry, horse training and racing. Take a look inside the Kazakh culture on the program KazArt. A small village on the slopes of Koktobe in Almaty. It is exactly in this house that the people's artist Abilkhan Kasteev spent the last 15 years of his life. Virtually nothing has changed since that time. This here is the studio of the greatest artist. The painting Turksib is hanging in the large easel. There is also a paintbrush and paints standing near it. It has already been years since the death of the artist, but the great art still smells wet.
Biz 14-ші жылы қаңтар айында 17-ші қаңтарда аштық. Сонда мына балаларының қолындағы дүниелерді.
We opened in January 17th of 2014. We brought various compositions of children. We are also especially bringing graphical works. In the State Museum, you can see copies of these pictures. Everything here, whether it's a table or the dishes, were touched by the artist himself. You can imagine his real life in this place. We worked hard in this studio and worked with plants in the garden.
Бәрі оғысының қолы, оғысының жаңағы жүрген, осында өмір сүрген уақытын көз алдыға елестетеді. Ана шеберханасында отырып жұмыстар жасаған, мына ауладағы бақшаны өзі күткен.
The picture Turksib that is hanging here is not by an accident. Kasteev spent his whole life researching this topic. Having been left an orphan, he started working early in his childhood. When he was 16, he had to work in the construction of the highway Turksib. He became a witness of the railway as well as the great construction projects. Perhaps it was this reason that he drew the first design in 1929 on paper, and several years later, he returned to this topic again and added some new elements.
Эта картина 1969 года является уже последней версией, заключительной версией этой темы в творчестве художника. Он ее создал в...
This picture from 1969 is the last version. That is, the final version of this topic of the artist's work. He created it over the course of his entire life. He integrated different impressions of the style of his life within the painting. And the Turksib symbolizes new life and industry in Kazakhstan. This shows the development of Kazakhstan, as well as the moment of meeting with ordinary people, such as village inhabitants, with this iron construction, the industry, and the train. And this moment emphasizes bright colors and scales, and it characterizes things in the center stage. Great importance is given also to the landscape.
Большое значение в этой работе отдается пейзажу.
The main peculiarity in the creative work of the people's artist is the description of Kazakh traditions in real life. His work includes several drawings in space, descriptions of plains and the width of the Kazakh steppe. Any peculiarities of the palette have significant meanings. In his famous Turksib, he could link and change light into black and dark pastel colors very easily. He described the happiest moments of people's lives with bright yellow and blue and saturated colors. If in his composition the artist described steam locomotives, I mean the train is in the center of the picture, so he also conveyed caravans and migration. The description of the past is seen on the left side of the painting. The artist painted the linking with the past and today. Also, you can notice the opinions of ordinary people from the news of the Kazakh land. One of the men is picking up his hat, or through different movements of women, for example. The artist described holidays and pleasure, surprised feelings in a very skillful way. Everything here is linked directly with the life of Kasteev. This Dombra was given to him as a present on the anniversary from the Composers' Union of Kazakhstan. And the Chopin is the pride of the place, which was given when the title of People's Artist was enamored upon him. Even then, the mirror on the wall was also given to Kasteev by Gulfayruz Ismailova. Then, after finishing his composition, Kasteev took the mirror and hung it on the back wall to see the details and the disadvantages of the painting.
Әр затта ол кісінің қолтаңбасы бар. Мына жерде өзі келген адам бұл бір қасиетті үй, қасиетті орын деп есептеймін.
Everything has its own sign and symbol. The man who visits this place must consider it as a holy house, a holy place. I think this is a place where you can come and get some spiritual impressions of our art. School children and students from various universities and institutes, as well as artists, come to this place. When Uncle Abilkhan was alive, his wife Sakup's table was always laid out for guests. All the artists came to his place to say hello, to ask him for advice, and to show their pictures. The house was always crowded with guests.
Есік ашық тұрған ғой, келіп кетіп жатқан халық.
Abilkhan Kasteev is a realist painter. He describes all the events of the times without change. This picture is called To Steal the Girl by Force. This painting was drawn in 1936. The master paid special attention to landscape in this picture. The appearance of every person had a harmony with nature. The picture A Bought Bride was also drawn during this period. He drew paintings dealing with topics of women's inequality at that time, which is A Bought Bride and To Steal the Girl by Force. With a series of old and new life, the artist made wonderful paintings in a portrait genre. In 1935, he drew the first portrait of Kenisari Kasimov. The generation of Qasim Khan and Abilkhan made the portrait of Kenisari. The artist conveyed the image of the following people brightly. They are Abay Kunanbayev, Abay's portrait, Shokan Valikhanov, and Amakhildi Imanov. One of the topics that Kasteev researched greatly was the image of Amakhildi Imanov. The artist researched his life from 1939 until 1970, and he tried to meet people who were familiar with him. Several years later, a film about the Batyr and the Igis on the stage was based on the version of the artist. If to talk about Amakhildi Imanov, we went to Torgay's region in the 1916s. He was a witness of the insurrection. He talked to people who were familiar with Amakhildi. He collected the photos from his relatives and listened to their stories about him. Then he made a generalized image. He made his image from the whole of his life. His portrait was so real that even Alibi Jean Kildin recognized it in the 1950s. He said that the picture looked like the living Amakhildi. Kasteev formed his own style in drawing the image of the person on the canvas. He corrected the image of the researcher and the scientist Shokan Valikhanov for several times, and he renewed it and gave it a different image. Today you can see the image of Shokan Valikhanov on a horseback at the State Museum named after Kasteev. In describing landscape pictures, he didn't neglect a thing. For example, there is watercolor in the fund of the Museum of the Artist, the internal picture of the yurt. It was drawn in the 30s. There you can see the large felt mat, a big felted mat with patterns and a sewing machine. He even didn't forget about the needle. He paid special attention to all details. He tried not to neglect a single thing. They say that in making a portrait of Abay Kunanbayev on the surface of the canvas, Kasteev had to search a lot. He couldn't make the portrait of the sage at one certain time. He had to read all of his poems and works, and only after that, he decided to draw him.
Тем не менее, в этих рамках он сохранял свою приверженность к основным духовным ценностям казахского народа.
Nevertheless, in 3 frameworks of the Soviet nation, he kept the national types and characters of the nation, traditions, the life of the interior yurts of the Kazakh people, for example. Everything was connected with the life of the Kazakhs. In spite of the times, Kasteev did not depart from his national traditions, so his works are still valuable and interesting, and they appeal to modern spectators.
И, может быть, поэтому его творчество, оно как бы остается ценным, интересным и привлекательным для современного даже зрителя.
The artist's works are devoted to the epos of the giant Jambul Janabayev. They are also very valuable. Kasteev saw the old Jambul. He visited his dwelling and he talked to him. The art researchers say that Abilkhan Kasteev was a master and he learned a lot about human psychology.
Ол кісінің суретшілік ерекшелігі деп, мына қалай айтсақ екен енді. Мына табиғатты
The peculiarity of the artist is in seeing the way he creates space and the making of nature. He creates panoramic images, and he could see so far that these places that not everyone are able to see. He had a piercing look, so he's described the surface of the canvas. For example, if he makes one image on the whole day, it is changed according to the weather. The work, which started in the morning, was completed only the next morning. He had a great memory.
Соны егер таңертең бастағанда мен сол таңертеңге аяқтайды екен. Ол памятінің күштілігі.
Nevertheless, when the artist was less busy, he visited his summer pastures in the slopes of the Ili Alatau. His desire and his appetite turned over to the natural landscapes. One of his most brilliant works is the description of the landscape of Madeo. Abilkhan Kasteev described the white snow and ice skillfully, and it's difficult skill for even a skillful artist. In the drawing of the Madeo ice rink, the artist described winter perfectly. It is very difficult for every artist to describe the condition of ice, for example. It is also difficult to express snow, linking 2 colors of white and black. That's why before drawing the picture of snow and the ice rink Madeo, he had to make a lot of sketches. They're saved in the fund of the museum. The room of the museum is full of history. The next room is a personal room of Kasteev. There you can see a gramophone, a big radio, and an old television set, which was in fashion in the 1950s, in the last century. In this shelf you can see the awards and certificates of the artist, his favorite photo instrument. People who knew Kasteev said that he loved taking photos in wonderful moments. Sometimes later, these pictures would become works of art. If he started a composition, it directly meant that he left his lunch to complete it. There remains from him about 20,000 works on the surface of canvas over his whole life. Half of them are kept in the museum of our country. The art researchers say that half of them are in the hands of private individuals. The Almaty State Art Museum got the name of the great artist in 1983. The more than 500 graphics and painting works are only the beginning in this fund, and they are the diamonds of Kazakh art and culture.